Feeling nervous about your IELTS speaking test? Believe me, you aren't alone. Hello, it's me Nico from justspeakupenglish, and today in this video lesson I'm going to share 10 expert-backed tips which will boost your confidence, sharpen your skills, and get you closer to the band score you are aiming for. But if you don't have enough information about IELTS exam, that time it could be better checking out my previous lesson about the introduction of the IELTS exam itself. You should know that IELTS speaking test consisting of 3 parts. Therefore, now we're going to take a simple look into all 3 parts. Thus, let's dive in. In part 1, you will have a 4 to 5 minutes conversation with an IELTS examiner about yourself. Topics might include work, personal interests, home life, and so on. In part 2 of speaking tests, you'll be given a card with a topic. You will have a minute to take notes and prepare your response around the task. You will then speak on the topic for 2 minutes. Lastly, in part 3, you will have a conversation with the IELTS examiner around the topic given in the part 2 to discuss it in more detail. Part 3 should take roughly 4 to 5 minutes to complete. Now it's time to go on with IELTS speaking test tips. Tip 1. Don't memorize answers. Let's read together the whole tip and then break down the main takeouts. Don't memorize answers, especially in part 1. Memorized language doesn't give the examiner an accurate measure of your English language skills. The examiner will be able to tell if you have memorized your answers. Briefly, if you had memorized your answers, it seems to be hard to remember what you had memorized. Therefore, you will be forced to take time to remember what you had memorized. It could cause distraction and may influence your final band score negatively. Thus, my advice would be, instead of memorizing, try to acquire particular vocabulary and word expressions around the most common IELTS speaking topics and practice them with your language partner. Tip 2. Don't use big and unfamiliar words. Let's read the whole tip together. Later on, discuss all takeouts of the tip. Now, you may want to impress the examiner with big and complex words in your speaking test, but to be safe, avoid using words you aren't familiar with. There is a higher chance of making mistakes by either mispronouncing words or using them in the wrong context. You know that mistakes may affect your final band score negatively. Therefore, my advice would be, instead of using big and unfamiliar words, try to use a range of vocabulary that you know, which is relevant to the speaking topic and being discussed. To this context, while you are preparing for IELTS speaking tests, you should definitely list the vocabulary which is related to the most common IELTS speaking tasks, and then use mind maps to acquire them. The time, believe me, you'll be getting closer to the band score you are aiming for. Let's go on with tip 3. Use a range of grammatical structures. When IELTS examiners assess your speaking skills, they mark you against the following assessment criteria: fluency and coherence, lexical resource, grammatical range and accuracy, and for sure, pronunciation. What does it mean? A range of grammatical structure. It exactly means that you should be able to express your ideas about the past, present, and future. In other words, you should be able to use all time tenses of English language properly. In particular, correct time and place. As the solution way, you can practice your speaking with native speaker or with someone whose English language skills are close to the native speaker. Or maybe you should take private lessons, and tutors, professionals could help you out to fix your problems delivered from grammatical structures. But we could have other solutions to the problem. You could try and use a range of grammatical structures to form simple and complex sentences to express what you want to say, and practice over and over speaking about the past, present, and future events and happenings. Because you know that practice is the key to get the closer to the band score you are aiming for. Tip 4. Don't worry about your accent. With a face-to-face speaking test, the IELTS examiner understands a wide range of accents, so we'll be able to understand what you say. Unlike an AI machine, if you can communicate well, then there is nothing to worry about. But what should be my advice related to accent? All accents are acceptable as they are natural, as they are improvised. But we have to consider that English is stress time language. Therefore, you should use proper intonation and stress while speaking. What you can do for that? You have to practice speaking with native speaker or with your friends and ask them, do they have difficulties to understand you? And once again, practice, practice, and practice again to make your speaking skills proper and to the point. Tip 5. Pause to think. There is an accepted idea that you can pause to think. In other words, there is no harm in taking time to express what you want to say properly. But how you can do that? We have got some opening ideas for conversation. Some of those ideas are: it's an interesting question. It's a difficult question, but I will try and answer it. It's such tough question I have never taught before. Let me see. I will take a time, and so on. We can say that there are similar bunch of the opening ideas you can use. But my advice would be, before the exam, you should try to acquire some of them. And it will be much better, as many as you can. And practice them while speaking with your language partner. Tip 6. Avoid using fillers. We generally use fillers when we don't know topic or we don't remember some vocabulary or grammatical structures. Therefore, instead of using fillers such as like, you know, I see, and so on, use the word expressions, ideas that we have mentioned under the tip 5. Tip 7. Extend your answers. I could say that it is one of the biggest problems among students when they aren't able to provide complete answers to the questions. Therefore, if your answers are too short, it means that you are not capable for speaking enough, or you're not aware of the speaking question or speaking task itself. And my advice would be, don't wait for prompting by examiner with a question why. Do it yourself. Answer in full. And you will be getting closer to the band score you're aiming for. Tip 8. Being positive. I believe it is true idea that smiling could help your pronunciation. In other words, being positive, smiling could help you to manage better volume of your speaking, better intonation, and better timing of stress. Therefore, bringing positive vibe to the exam matters a lot to your final band score. My advice would be, stay positive and push yourself towards acquiring language, and you will get to closer the band score you are aiming for. Tip 9. Don't speak in a monotone. Sometimes while we are speaking, we speak with a little variation, which makes it difficult to understand others what we want to say. Therefore, what you have to do is applying verbal and oral language. What does it mean? While you're speaking, you can keep eye contact with the examiner, or try to change your speaking volume. Use appropriate intonation, pause, take a time, use the ideas that we have discussed before. And that time you wouldn't have difficulties to understand others while you are speaking. Tip 10. Practice most common IELTS topics. You know that IELTS speaking tests based on some particular topics. Therefore, my advice would be, list most common IELTS topics and try to extend vocabulary around them. After that, practice speaking on these topics with your friends, family members, colleagues, or anyone else who can help out with the speaking practice. In addition, I will provide most common IELTS speaking topics in the description of this video where you can check them out. The lesson is over, but if you like the content, please don't hesitate to subscribe to my YouTube channel and comment what do you want to see in the next video. Stay tuned.